Hey, we're live. Yeah, welcome back to Canna-heads ND, episode 11, even though the title says 10. So let me fix that now. I totally had that on my list of stuff to do. All right, there we go. It's your once a week podcast. Once a week podcast for the latest in cannabis local and national news every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. We made it on time this time. Typically, we go for about an hour to an hour and a half, and my name is Phil.
I'm Anthony.
And yeah, welcome back to the show, everybody. If you guys like the newsy type, podcasty type things, KRFF Radio Free Fargo, which is 95.9 in Fargo, on Thursdays from 4 to 5 p.m. That's with Greg Wilson, and he does the news stuff, but we don't cover the same news articles. So like, it's not like he repackages mine or I don't repackage his. So we kind of do the same. Or we don't do the same topics, is what I'm trying to say. And my feedback audio is too high. Okay, there we go.
I have to check on something real quick. Sorry about that.
Go for it. So, yeah, we're going to cover a lot of different things. We're going to cover basically a bunch of legalization news, a lot of stuff that has happened. It's a little bit of what Greg covered before, but I think it's very important to cover. And now there's also the Purdue Pharma. I'm just going to kind of tell the story. It's going to be a little reoccurring thing. Next week, we'll be covering what actually was happening inside of the company. And I think it's a really important story, just because there's a lot of really shitty things that the Sacklers did. But some of it can also be chalked up to making one of the biggest jobs a corporation has is making their board members money. So a lot of it can also have to do with kind of how corporate world sucks and is shitty. But we'll just kind of jump into it here. I'm sure he'll be back here in a minute. So, yeah. There's a federal legalization bill. Oh, there he is. All right. Hey, I didn't even have to jump into the stories. I kind of treaded water for a little bit.
Sorry about that.
It's all good.
There was a loud crash in the background, so I had to go check on that and make sure everybody was okay.
Oh, boy. Yeah. So, the MORE Act, that everybody seems to... I think I've covered this multiple times before, but the MORE Act isn't going to be an actual bill that passes both Senate and House. But there is a federal marijuana legalization bill, the MORE Act, which will be receiving a vote in the House next week. And that's not, well, I'm pretty sure it's going to happen, but at the same time, it might not. This was in September. They were saying, oh, it's going to happen next week. We're going to vote on this. And then they looked at optics, and the optics said that, hey, you probably shouldn't do that right now just because, why is my, oh, cool. How about we do that? All right. Sorry. There we go. Okay, so, they kind of pushed off the vote because it would have looked a little shitty if you were voting on cannabis and legalization while there was also the looming issue of the stimulus bill that was passing through. So they kind of moved it down, and what ended up happening is it's coming back up now. So it's still unsure if it's going to be kind of pushed off again just because of the stimulus bill, because that's an issue that's going on. But it's not 100% sure, so don't be like full on to it, but it's a pretty good possibility that gets voted on in the House. Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, who is Democrat, so the chamber will take up the MORE Act sometime between Wednesday and Friday. The House approving the bill during the presidential transition is more of pushing pressure on the upcoming administration, aka Joe Biden, because he is who won the election. Um,
Okay,
so,
pause. Interjection.
all right.
President-elect Joe Biden. That is what it is. There's nothing you're going to say or do to change that. That's how elections work.
Yeah.
I saw a video of somebody dead ass. I'm not even messing with you. Dead ass saying the only thing that you Democrats have is the numbers. Think about that for a second, would you?
Yeah,
Yes, there is numbers. Numbers that say Joe Biden is going to be the next president. Just deal with it. Carry on.
got into a battle with, well, a Twitter battle. Let me see if anything has popped up from it, so I don't like. Yeah, okay. I guess am I ready to show this? Okay, whatever. I don't really care what people see on my Twitter. All right, so this is Twitter. Um, so the Team Trump election thing was talking about like Newsmax. And Newsmax, let me just put this one into perspective. Before Donald Trump pushed Newsmax and started talking about them, they would be getting around 4,000 to 10,000 viewers on their channel. Newsmax is not something that is covered on every single, what do you call, cable platform or anything like that. So it's you can't really get Newsmax is what I'm trying to say. So this was just a video, and a couple of maybe a month or two ago, Trump had tweeted, "I follow Trump on Twitter. I'm sorry, this is a really bad move. Don't follow Trump on Twitter." Anyway, there was a clip of them talking about the election fraud. In that, they were like they wheeled out a fucking chalkboard, and they were using a chalkboard, and like the audio was shit and everything like that. Like you can totally tell that this is a up and coming platform. We have higher production value here than their like couple $1 million cable production. That's just saying something. But anyway, we were getting a little sidetracked. I was just like, hey, they should just pull out this chalkboard. That would really step up their production value, everything that we come to expect from Newsmax. Um, then, whatever. This guy comes in, and this guy is a producer for a podcast on YouTube. I didn't really know that until like this morning, but he was like, did the Republican observers inspect every ballot at Pennsylvania? Yes or no? And I was like, can we just sit back and understand that if you were to go through every single ballot for ballot,
Hmm.
we wouldn't know anybody won. We would probably still be trying to figure out who won the 2012 election.
Yeah,
If I
the
got that
sheer
right.
amount of just trying
Yeah.
to count them, let alone review every single one, would be mind-numbing in terms of time.
Right. So let me see. Where's my reply now? What? I know I replied somewhere in this chain. Oh, okay. So he went on. Uh, Here we go. So he links this video, and I'm just like, this was talking about the uh hanging chads. So 2012, 2000. So I'm talking about the 2000 election. Anyway, he's talking about the hanging chads. I'm like, this video shows them inspecting the questionable ballots. They weren't inspecting every fucking ballot. And this wasn't every ballot. They were just the questionable ones, the hanging chad ballots. Anyway, this guy still will not understand what we're talking about, and that's what we're looking at with Trump supporters. That's all I have to say about it. But yeah, that's been a thing that has been going on all day today. It's great. Anyway, sidetracked. So
You said that, it just like it irked me because I'm like, there's still people like it's not over till it's over. No, it's over. Sorry,
yeah.
guys. It's done.
Yeah. So this doesn't. So the policy doesn't really have every single aspect. The MORE Act. We're going back to the MORE Act. Sorry, I'm not super ADD right now or anything. I promise. So this was more of a pressure move to getting President-elect Joe Biden to embrace it. Last week we had talked about um, basically the transitions website doesn't have a single word about legalization.
Mm-hmm.
His entire platform when he was, uh, going around to town halls and everything like that was about legalization as well. So it's just something that ended up getting dropped. Kamala Harris is actually uh, the sponsor, or Jared Nadler, but Kamala Harris, I think, was the sponsor in Senate. But this is the House resolution form of it, and the Senate resolution is, yeah, who is it run? I'm pretty sure it's Kamala Harris. Yeah, Kamala Harris. So I don't know how to say her name.
Kamala.
Kamala?
Mm-hmm. Kamala Harris.
Kamala. All right. So Kamala Harris is the sponsor of the Senate form of it. Wow. Okay. So
We're on point tonight.
I'm all over it today. So yeah, basically this pretty much has a 3% chance of passing, being enacted. So this has a 3% chance of it passing House, Senate, and not getting vetoed. So it's not as big of a thing as everybody seems to make it out to be, but basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to get everybody on paper showing if they're for or against legalization.
Right, and
And
I shared this with Phil, literally like right before we did this, and the only reason why, like, I know the odds of it are shit to none every time that we do this, but it's like I did say a long time ago, every time that there was something about it, we talk about it. So.
oh yeah, yeah. And I think what this will do is it'll basically be like, hey, it'll be a litmus test of how the Democrats are going to be working between the Democratic presidency and the House, and how it's going to go to Senate. It's kind of like a litmus test, but Senate is up for interpretation at this point until Georgia's over and everything like that. I think it's Georgia that has a special election. Either way, another place that has a special election. Um, so that is kind of where that is. But the MORE Act would essentially, it has a lot of support, obviously. Um,
Which is
what
crazy
was in
to
the
think
MORE
the
Act?
amount of support it has and the odds that it has of approval. Like even the support in Senate that it has.
Huh? I'm sorry. I was trying to find
No, you're cool.
what it
It's
actually did.
I was just thinking, like, it's amazing that the amount of support that cannabis has, even throughout our government today, even amongst the older ones, and it still has such a low odd of approval.
Well, I think it also has to do with, I think both sides are for cannabis legalization, just a different view of how to implement it.
Mm.
And I think a lot of it has to do with the control the states will have and the control the federal government will have. And I think that's the reason why federal legalization is having such a hard time. Because, I mean, the view is the federal government can't control what every single state does, and that's the Republican view. And the Democratic view is, hey, we can signal to them that they're not going to get in trouble for doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
when I say not in trouble, I mean not challenged and not, whatever. A system being set up to like try to federally prosecute different uh, sales. So like even growing and all that stuff, the actual stuff going on in like California when it first legalized, there was raids that were happening in California from feds, and that was them trying to enforce the federal law while there's a state law saying otherwise, and that's kind of what that pushback is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of why it's such a big deal with federal. But yeah, I don't think it's going to pass, and if anything, it'll tell us, the people who have been against it are still against it, and the people who are for it are still for it. I don't think it's changed anybody's mind, but it'll still be interesting to see just how close we are, because I don't think we've had that kind of a vote in quite a while, and people's opinions change.
Mm-hmm.
So, Yeah, especially with like since the whole George Floyd and the whole criminal reform situation has been going on, I think that's kind of tipped people's opinions over a while. But yeah. A thing that we also that Greg had covered, and this is just kind of an overview. Why will you? Can they stop asking me to join their newsletter? I'm already part of their newsletter. Why do you think I get half these stories? Okay, so uh, in during the election, every single state that had cannabis on the ballot passed. And there are 3 states right now. There was a 4th state. The 4th state was Nebraska, and that was before the election. They got challenged, and unfortunately, the challenge was successful. But uh, in Mississippi, there was a suit that was filed days before the election. The with the mayor not weighing in on the merits of the measure, but he was contending that its placement on the ballot was unconstitutional due to statutory signature gathering requirements. The Secretary of State and Attorney General condemned the action as a woefully untimely lawsuit. And the Supreme Court said that the filers had till December 7th to submit written arguments, and the Secretary of State has until the December 28th to respond. Essentially, what they're saying is that because I think this is the one where they had no, this wasn't the one where they're showing money. Okay. So this was for this happened before the election essentially, and they had essentially submitted in this lawsuit. They kind of pushed it off and said, "Hey, it can still go on to the ballot, and we can continue this challenge." For some reason, my chat is like not wanting to show up. What's going on? Why is there a chat message on there? I don't know if.
Yeah, I just had a thing pop up on mine. Something about that picture that I sent.
Wait, what?
Like it popped up with that picture that I sent you. That was weird.
What
Skype's
picture?
being dumb.
No, the chat in like YouTube chat. Is this like glitching the hell out? Do I have the wrong thing?
Bill, did you break it?
I have
You broke it.
no. Oh, why is it like not showing up in my chat? Okay, I. All right. Doug said that's right. That's exactly what it is. It's a battle between federal and state. Yeah, Schedule 2 or Schedule 3 as well. I think we'll see the deschedule or the rescheduling. I don't. Obviously, you guys know what my opinion is. It's not going to be descheduled; it'll be rescheduled. But yeah, we'll probably see that it's going to get rescheduled. Um, I don't know why my chat's fucking up. Whatever, I'm over it. Anyway, so this lawsuit um, had basically started before the election, and hopefully we'll see what their argument kind of is. It doesn't seem to be a argument that they've really made public. Let's see, what is the argument? That's what I'm trying to find out. What their argument is. Because she argued that it is unlawfully placed before voters. Oh, okay. So this was because it was a statutory one. This was a medical cannabis initiative. A suit filed. God, this is kind of shitty writing. Sorry to say that, but oh yeah, statutory signature gathering requirements. So they're basically saying that the statutory requirements weren't met, essentially. I kind of hopefully we can actually know a little bit more of basically, yeah, here's the argument. Signatures of the qualified electors from any congressional district shall not exceed 1/5 of the total number of signatures required to qualify an initiative petition for placement upon the ballot. So this is a law that stipulates that they needed more signatures, or they need less signatures. Yeah, so that's the argument. I'm gonna look more into this. I don't think I'm prepared to really even commentate over this one. So Yeah, Mississippi is being sued. That's all I gotta say about it. Montana um, had a adult use recreational bill, and they tried to get the state Supreme Court to invalidate the proposal ahead of the vote, so before the election. And they rejected that request, and they said you guys need to go back to like the lower courts before you go to Supreme Court. You're kind of like trying to cut somebody out here. That's not how this works. Um, so they are, I guess, setting up another suit. Um, yeah, so uh, they didn't rule on the merits. The plaintiffs are now pursuing action in the lower court, arguing that the statutory proposal unlawfully appropriates funds. This is the one I was talking about, violating a portion of the state constitution that prohibits such allocations from being included in a citizen initiative. So in this measure, they were talking about money being placed into where the taxes go, essentially, and they are basically saying that that is unlawful. Whether it's unlawful or not, I'm pretty sure the outcome, even if it is invalidated, is not going to be the whole measure being invalidated. It'll just be the appropriations part, more than likely. But at the same time, I'm not sure what their initiative process is. If it's they have to go back to election to change that. But even if the argument is valid, I think we were talking about it a couple weeks ago. Even if the argument is valid, there's been other measures that have passed that had that type of wording in law that have been circumvented. Talking about, I think there was a tobacco tax measure that passed through, and that was appropriating funds. Obviously, it was about tobacco taxes. So Montana more than likely will not invalidate the issue. Whether or not it has to go back to election is a completely different situation. In South Dakota, the Pennington County Sheriff Kevin Thorne and State Highway Patrol Superintendent Rick Miller filed a lawsuit in the courts, claiming that the proposal to legalize marijuana that passed with 54% of the vote should be invalidated, and it's being paid by state funds. The constitutional amendment violates a 2018 requirement that no proposed amendment may embrace more than one subject. This was a issue that happened in Nebraska as well. It's kind of the same tact. So
I kind of want to see the bill because it's like, how what's the other subject that it's covering?
Let's see. I'm pretty sure it's this one. Okay. The recreational measure, which is a constitutional amendment, that's the one that they're suing on, will make it so people 21 or older will be able to possess, distribute up to 1 ounce, and that there will also be allowed to cultivate up to 3 cannabis plants. The Department of Revenue would be charged with developing licensing regulations. The Medical Cannabis Initiative will make a statutory change to allow patients suffering. So the recreational measure. So which one are they fighting? I mean, I'm sure they're fighting both, but yeah. So this is the constitutional one because they're talking about it says the constitutional amendment violates a 2000 requirement. So they are suing. I wonder if they're going under the assumption that cultivation and possession are two different
Right.
issues.
That's why I was asking, because it's like, what are they saying? Like, is there like a tax breakdown or something in it?
Well,
Because
they're
then you're
talking about it having more than one issue. The thing is the Nebraska one. Um, just to make sure I have this correct, the Nebraska one was about growing and possession. Was the argument, I think.
and
I
like
could.
I'm struggling to understand like the legal argument of how those are unrelated. You know what I'm saying? I can
Yeah.
get like if it was, they're trying to break down the financials and then the physical cannabis itself, but
Yeah.
I'm
So
struggling to understand that.
the Nebraska one was the right to certain persons to produce and medicinally use under subsections, and then would enshrine a right and immunity for entities to grow and sell cannabis. So they're talking, oh, because it's like people, businesses. So I don't know
So they're
why they
talking
would
about the difference between civilian and
corporations, I guess.
yeah, like there's a word I'm looking for here. I don't know, but business.
Yeah. And how much you want to bet that they're going to try to, I mean, whether it's still a state issue, so it's not like that case law really holds up too much, but I'm sure one of the things is, hey, the same thing, the same type of measure, the same type of law is in our Constitution as it is in Nebraska's, and Nebraska's was successful, so you should probably say yes to us. But yeah, I think the biggest thing will be is even if the outcome here could be bad, that's not to say that that it'll be, well, if it gets struck down, chances are they'll be appealing it and then it'll go to the higher courts. Because this is lower court. I'm pretty sure they're talking about it being in a lower court right now. Yeah, because this was
they're going to have to.
sixth
Sorry, go ahead.
judicial. Yeah, sixth judicial circuit court. So there's still a constitutional one coming up, I guess, or not constitutional, Supreme Court or higher court.
All right, and ultimately they're going to have to figure out how to argue that this is the will of the people. But just because we don't like it, we're going to try and pull every stop that we can to invalidate it.
Yeah, it's essentially. I'm pretty sure they were pretty much prepared. This was filed. This was filed last week, but I'm pretty sure this argument was probably thrown out once before the actual election. So I'm sure they were prepared. And also now that they've actually gotten the actual support that they need, I'm pretty sure that the group can also find better legal representation to fight it against them. So maybe it's a good thing that they waited. Because before, like, if you're just a group that wants to legalize, they're not really like 100% sure that you're going to be successful, so they're not going to really give you the time of day. But now that there's a possibility of your name being out there more publicly, so the lawyers will be more apt to saying, yo, we're totally going to help you out here. So maybe it's a good thing that they waited.
Yeah.
But I also don't understand how this type of a law it works in today's society, or well, in today's times essentially, because every single amendment would embrace more than one subject if you're going to be breaking it down between producers and people. If you're just saying it has more than one subject, there's so much more to the topic and so many issues of different topics that have multiple facets to them. So if you're just saying you can only fix one issue in this topic, that's not gonna do it. Like that's just gonna slow shit down, which I'm sure is the point of it. But yeah, so that's South Dakota's. And if there are like when these types of rulings happen, there are opinions that are posted publicly. So I will more than likely have the opinion in my hand when they do happen, because yeah, I usually like these types of things. So, and Nebraska, obviously, they're going to be going for 2022. So there's that. So yeah, I'm sorry if I made this even more confusing than it was. I was pretty sure I knew what the topic. I'd say I kind of winged this topic, and I'm sorry.
You're good, Billy. I forgive you.
um. So this one we already covered. There we go. All right. So Oregon County prosecutors stops drug possession cases following a decriminalization vote that's coming up. Oh my gosh, the Clackamas County. Where is Clackamas County? Just because that's a cool way to say the name. that Camas County, population of 375,992, making it Oregon's third most populous county. It's a big county. The district attorney office had sent out a memo. While it opposes the policy change, they recognize the will of the voters and feel that having officers investigate and submit cases for a prosecution in the weeks leading up to February 1st, when the law goes into effect, will not lead to any sanction or court supervised treatment, and is not the most effective use of criminal justice resources. Oregon was the one that legalized possession. Decriminalized possession, not legalized. Decriminalized possession of all drugs. So the initiative passed with a 58% vote. It basically says simple drug possession will be treated as a Class E infraction, which is punishable up to a maximum fine of $100 and no jail time, and that fine can also be waived if the individual shows the court that they have completed a substance misuse assessment. Substance misuse assessment is basically where you go to a rehab and ask them if you're addicted to drugs, and they say, well, you are at a rehab, so yeah. That's how that works.
Like, you're look around, Cupcake.
It's basically like going to a dealership and asking them, is a car a good idea to have? Like,
oh fuck.
I don't know. No, it's not. It's not a good idea to have. It's not how that works. So, it's interesting because it's only $100 fine. I didn't know it was that low. A maximum of $100 fine. Like, that's insane.
Isn't that crazy?
I mean, if they've completed a substance misuse assessment, the problem there is they also do have investments in substance misuse treatment, including using tax revenue for legal marijuana sales. But in some cases, you don't qualify for those types of help. So it might cost you more to go the treatment route than the fine. So that's kind of an issue. But at the same time, like, the fact of treating drug addiction and all of that stuff, because more of the people that get caught are the ones who have an addiction issue. Like, I mean, I guess your chances are a lot higher, is what I'm trying to say. Of, if you're a heroin addict, of getting caught with possession of heroin, if you've possessed it more than one time. So yeah, it's a good thing that we're actually treating the issue rather than throwing them in jail and hoping that they get better, because that's not how that works at all. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that I mean, he is right, saying, hey, like, this is February 1st. All anybody really needs to do is, first of all, substance misuse treatment, 90 days. So that leads you into February 1st. So they really can't do anything. So the issue that he's seeing having come up, and I'm sure other counties will kind of go with it as well, is, hey, okay, this person gets busted with possession of heroin, right? So they go to their first court date, they say not guilty, the whole entire process starts up, and right after you get discovery, you go around and turn around and say, hey, I need a continuance until I'm done with rehab. And that rehab is usually 90 days. So 90 days from, let's go with December 1st, for instance, is going to put you in December, January, March, or January, February. Yes, it's going to put you past February. So they can't do anything to you because it's basically whenever the crime has been committed is usually the law that they follow under. But you can usually ask the judge to take you under the new law, and 9 times out of 10 they'll go with that. So yeah, him saying it won't lead to any sanction or court supervised treatment, so it's kind of a waste of time, is very valid. So yeah, I mean, he says while he fundamentally disagrees with this measure, huh?
He said it's progression.
Yeah. Yeah. And he goes on to say, while it's fundamentally disagree with this measure, ceasing to prosecute these matters prior to February 1st is consistent with the will of the voters, which we must respect. Hey, maybe this sentence can go to South Dakota. I should have found it by now. South Dakota, Montana, and Mississippi. Maybe they can just kind of send them that message. Because that's kind of how that's working.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the decision of our office is not intended not divest local law enforcement officers the ability to conduct lawful investigation, searches, and arrests. So the biggest thing here is it's possession. It's not sales, and it's not what's it called, production. So they can still get in trouble if they are selling and if they're producing. So 9 times out of 10, they'll be, instead of possession, giving somebody a possession charge, they may investigate them for sales, and that's probably their easiest win. So it kind of opens people up a little bit, which is kind of shitty. But at the same time, it kind of pushes off the whole issue of being arrested on the spot, essentially. So yeah, this should be interesting. And yeah. New Jersey prosecutors are going on to suspend marijuana possession cases. Kind of the same idea here. But this isn't New Jersey legalized too. Yeah. So they're kind of having the same deal. On Wednesday, told prosecutors to adjourn any marijuana possession cases until at least January 25th, 2021, which is essentially their process. Is they have the legalized cannabis part, but they don't have the framework. So the initiative does amend the state constitution to legalize for 21 or older, but lawmakers also still have to enable the legislation by creating a regulatory framework for cannabis sales. So essentially what this would mean is you can't, or they're going with don't push cases, ask for continuances, and adjourn the marijuana cases. So, push them off, or not push them off, but seek dismissal on these cases because most likely the framework will be in place. So yeah, there's really no point here. Yeah, so the day after the election, Attorney General had issued initial guidance to prosecutors encouraging them to use their discretion when it comes to marijuana offenses and will soon be codified as legal. The Attorney General's office listed 7 specific laws that will be impacted by the temporary policy change, including penalizing possession of up to 50 grams of cannabis and being under the influence of marijuana. Was that illegal? Seriously? In New Jersey, it was illegal to be high? All right.
I thought New Jersey was a little farther ahead.
Yeah, like I get the possession part, but how the fuck are you gonna prove the under the influence part?
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I mean, it could be the whole DUI aspect of, if you have to submit to a blood test type of a situation, but again, it lasts for 30 days if you're like a constant smoker. So that's yeah, anyway, the new memo specifies that in cases where there are other pending charges in addition to the marijuana possession-related offenses, prosecutors shall use their discretion to either postpone the case in its entirety or seek dismissal without prejudice of the above enumerated marijuana possession-related charges and proceed with prosecution of the remaining charges. So, possession of cannabis and driving under the influence type of a thing. The driving under the influence is not dropped. Essentially, and it's kind of dumb that he had to put that in the memo. I'm pretty sure that's pretty fucking obvious between everybody. So, yeah, that's basically that aspect of it. And, hey, look, we've used this picture before.
Mm-hmm.
This picture was in 2 weeks ago, or maybe 3 weeks ago. Something very similar. It was probably a zoomed in, cropped in photo of it. But yeah. And now we get into the Sackler family, which is pretty much where almost all of my time went to, and that's the reason why I'm kind of meh. So, we're going this way. All right, cool. So Purdue is a manufacturer of OxyContin, but Purdue Frederick was the name of the company that was founded in 1892 in New York, and they had patent medicines. So they had medicines that they created and have a patent on. Their first medicine on market was something called Gray's Glycerin Tonic, which essentially looks like this. Essentially, it's overpriced wine as a medicine. It was 11% alcohol, and there was sherry wine on top of it and glycerin. And it had broad applications from anywhere from anemia to tuberculosis. This was a medicine that they expected to treat tuberculosis with. So the company was purchased in 1952 by Arthur Sackler, the 39th one of it, and was run by his brothers Mortimer, 36, and Raymond, 32. And they co-authored more than 100 studies on biochemical roots of mental illnesses. So they have a background in mental illness. They were actually the first to identify a link between psychosis and the hormone cortisone. And these are them with their faces in OxyContin. So yeah, they were basically doing a lot of research. They did have their patent medicine out there. This is the 50s and the 60s, so they're really... The 60s was the rise of anxiety. And there was a company, a small little itty-bitty startup by the name of Roche. And Roche had come up to the Sacklers and was inquiring about a advertising strategy because they were also really good with setting up advertisements, and they got the American Medical Association's journal or something like that. They made color. I don't know if that's really that important, but basically they had a lot of advertising knowledge under their belt. So they had a new anti-anxiety medication, and they called it Valium. So at the time, anxiety was viewed as a severe mental illness, and mental health at the time was Freudian, meaning they related it to, like, your parents are the ones that fucked you up, and that, like, it's all in your head type of a situation, and that essentially when people had anxiety or depression or anything like that, they were frowned down upon in society. So, like, nobody wanted to admit that they had anxiety. Nobody wanted to admit that they were depressed. It was kind of a really internalized type of situation. So the ones that did end up seeking help were the ones that were in severe need for medication. So essentially, if we look at it this way, Roche has come up to the Sacklers and was like, hey, we have this medicine. It's an anti-anxiety medicine. We have a problem. People in society kind of look down upon people who would take our medicine. Is there a way that you can make it so that this isn't a problem? What do you do with that situation? Well, you make up a disease and the symptom. And wow, I just peeked the hell out of that one. So this is when the word psychic tension was a disease and symptom. Psychic tension is today's stress, and the secret culprit behind it is somatic conditions including heartburn, gastrointestinal issues, insomnia, and restless leg syndrome. Having made that one, it became America's most widely prescribed medication. It was the first to reach more than $100 million in sales, and behind sorry, I wrote this out. I'm sorry. The first to reach more than 100 million in sales, and compensation dependent on the amount of pills sold. So he had more reason to push this a lot harder because that's kind of how he was making his money. So he made a lot of money since it was the first company to make $100 million, and was the was also inducted into the Medical Advertising Hall of Fame. That's a thing that happens. It's a thing that still exists to this day. Um, so
That's just frustrating to me that that's even a thing.
yeah, like you know those ads that you see on TV, and like essentially the Hall of Fame in this type of a situation is how fast the person can say what the side effects are at the end of the entire ad, and if you
Yeah.
can push that into more than or to less than half the entire ad. But yeah, so they became the America's most widely prescribed medication. Um, and yeah, in 1972, a London doctor was working for a hospice company, and at the time, hospice is like end of life care. They were giving morphine to their patients to help them out. And so that this guy was like wondering if there was a time released morphine pill that they can give so people can sleep throughout the night. But let me just point that one out. Morphine, it was an end of life care type of a situation. So as fucked up as it sounds, it didn't really matter if they had an addiction, if they were dying soon. So morphine was being used to treat insomnia to these people. Let's just make sure we're all on the same page here. Morphine, I mean, it does make you sleepy, but it's a very, very strong painkiller.
Mm-hmm.
um, so they were approaching him on the idea of a time-released morphine pill. They basically he reasoned it as saying it would allow dying cancer patients to sleep throughout the night without an IV addiction. And addiction wasn't really a problem since, yeah, if they're hooked on their final days, which is kind of fucked up to say, but you know, yeah, that was the view that there was in 1987. Um, so that doctor in London worked with Purdue, and they had released a medicine in the UK under this doctor that did this. Um, or Cecily Saunders was the name of the hospice movement, had released that medicine, and in 1987, Purdue released a time release morphine pill by the name of MS Cotton. It was the gold standard in pain relief, and there were two doctors from Memorial Hospital in New York published a fateful article in a medical journal that purported to show that, based on a study of 38 patients, long-term opioid treatment was safe and effective so long as the patients had no history of drug abuse before. So essentially, they were basically saying this isn't a habit-forming medicine, but it could possibly trigger a habit to people who have been, uh, you know, addicted
Yeah, who
beforehand.
have had.
So they did have another problem though. This was seen as a end of life medicine. So people who were getting it prescribed for back pain and everything like that, because it kind of ended up sprouting out that way. Like, yes, this is a good end of life medicine in the higher doses, but in the smaller doses, this can help your back. Um, so when people are prescribed morphine or MS Cotton, they were viewing it as like, dude, I just have a backache. I'm not gonna die. It's all right. So they had a problem with that. And it was the main opioid used at the time, and their product of the slow release type of situation was aimed to kind of help, like, hey, yes, you're not gonna die from this, but you're not being hooked up to an IV was the idea. That didn't work. So they were aiming to make a lower strength opioid using the compound of oxycodone, which at the time was seen as a less powerful morphine. We're just going to also point out the fact that these people were medical researchers beforehand, and they saw a research paper that wasn't peer reviewed or anything like that, and we're like, yep, I believe that. All right, cool, let's go with that. It's actually 50 times stronger than morphine. So this is where this started. So morphine was kind of, end of life, and they're like, we need something that's, morphine light, and we're not going to double check this or anything like that. We're just going to make it. So they named it Oxycontin in the form of MS Cotton, Oxycontin. And they were the reason why they were so successful with oxycodone was because people who were pronouncing it were mispronouncing it as oxycodone, whereas codeine is weaker than morphine. So people were saying, oh, oxycodone, it's just a lighter form of morphine, when in reality it was oxycodone that people were receiving. So they just kind of rolled with it. And they started producing this in massive quantities. The FDA also allowed the company to include an astonishing label claim in OxyContin's package insert saying, delayed absorption, as provided by OxyContin tablets, is believed to reduce the abuse liability of a drug. Essentially what they're trying to say is, this drug is less abusable because of the time-released
Yeah,
mechanism.
wasn't part of it was less habit forming?
Huh?
Wasn't part of it was less habit forming?
Yeah, because it was like a longer thing. Like it essentially the mechanism that they were talking about is it's in a wax, like a wax pill essentially. So it had multiple layers. So like your body, I'm not sure if it's wax or not, but it looks like wax when you have it. I've had it before. It's like a really hard coating, and then underneath that hard coating is like a layer of oxycodone, and then there's another hard coating, and then another layer of oxycodone. It's kind of like layered oxycodone that your body will slowly dissolve, and that's how that works. But yeah, it was kind of like, hey, this isn't as habit forming because you don't need to take it as much, and people who want to get high on it aren't really looking for the long high, they're looking for the rush right now, which is not true at all. Like, at all.
So, yeah, that's like the opposite of the actual want of it.
Yeah, and not to mention, so I mean, I'm sure they didn't have this technology in the back in then the days, but MS Cotton, for instance, was also in that wax system. But if what you would do is you would heat it up in water, and because it was wax, it would soften up, and then you would smash it with something, and the webbing of the entire wax would just kind of like collapse, and then you just pulled that out, and then all of the medicine was in there. Like, it wasn't hard to defeat, and that was the problem, is they were saying, yo, look, people aren't going to use our shit because they are too lazy to use our shit, and sorry, that's not what happened there.
Why were they fucking wrong?
Yeah, so they were essentially able to crush it up, heat it up, whatever, and snort it, and you would get the entire, like, amount in your one inhalation. And yeah, it wasn't exactly news to them as well, because, well, they were researchers, so I'm sure that they tried to figure out what their issues could possibly be with this idea. But they warned that consuming broken pills would thwart the time release system and subject patients to a potentially fatal overdose. So not only did they know in the back end there's emails to prove that they did, they also knew about it and put it on the packaging. So they knew it enough to the point that they needed to warn other people that, yo, this isn't foolproof, and the fact that we're telling you about the theory and we've already debunked it is don't worry about it. By 2001, annual OxyContin sales had surged past $1 billion. They rebranded pain relief as a sacred right, universal narcotic entitlement almost, to not only terminally ill patients, but to every American with pain. So everybody was getting this prescribed to them, and still do.
Basically, if you said you were in pain, that was enough.
And one of the things that they did, I didn't really write this down too much, but one of the things that they started was that pain scale of 1 to 10. And essentially, when they were getting these doctors to prescribe, and they were actively talking to most of the prescribing doctors and sending out bulletins and everything like that, they would say that if they have over X number, this works. If they have under this number, that works. So they essentially created this scale of 1 to 10 that I think they still use. I'm pretty
In
sure they still
hospitals,
do. Yeah.
we still have it plastered all over the hospital.
Yeah. And that was kind of their idea. So senators and members of Congress on key committees got donations from Purdue. A Sackler family also huge philanthropists. They donated to a shitload of different museums in different states. They were known as like that's where you usually have heard the Sackler family as like donators to museums like art museums and everything like that. They would have history museums. They would be donating to them, and they have ginormous buildings that they own. They bought like college wings, so there's like different colleges with the Sackler wing. Not much anymore. They've been renamed, and there's a lot of museums that said, yo, we're not accepting a single dollar from you ever the fuck again. But during this time, life was great, and they were giving out money left and right. Um, and on that situation of giving out money, they started flying doctors out to seminars, which essentially were golf trips to like prestigious golf courses. Um, and essentially, what they did was they sent out flyers to these seminars and everything like that. The doctors that would bite, they would send them out on these lavish vacations, float them on money for the entire situation or the entire trip and everything like that. And then they would watch the prescriptions that doctor would send out. So they would see if, hey, did we sell to them? Did we sell that he's gonna start prescribing this? And if they did, then they would send them back. They would say, yo, hey, you're like top 1,000th prescriber here. You should come out to this other seminar. These seminars usually ended up being small dinners and speaking events that would promise them $500 for just speaking, which is on top of paying for the travel. So like $500 isn't a lot, but like if you just make $500 on a night type of a thing, like 15 minutes, it's not that big of a deal, is what a lot of these doctors saw. And between 1996 and 2001, the number of OxyContin prescriptions in the U.S. surged from 300,000 to nearly 6 million. And that's kind of when the problems occurred. That's when pill mills started getting busted and everything like that. A lot of people had started, getting worried about the prescriptions. People were overdosing. There's a huge problem. So Purdue was like, yo, we got this fix here. And they had launched a national monitoring program called RADARS, which made it one step easier for them to know which doctors were prescribing the most. So it helped them, and it helped people, essentially, the nation, that wasn't really that well kept up, but they did tamper-resistant prescription pads because there was a lot of issues with that. And they had tracking of the products, so like they knew if somebody was stealing at the pharmacy or if somebody was stealing at the samples that they were giving out. So like they set up this program. OxyContin came in at 20 or 10, 20, 30, 40, and 80 milligram formations. And at one time they had 160. Um, but through a separate lawsuit that ended up happening, this all information, by the way, all comes from different lawsuits that they had settled. So that's how this is public. Um, a separate lawsuit that was filed was they were marketed as a medicine that lasted for 12 hours. The problem was patients were noticing from 6 to 8 hours. And the problem was because people's tolerances went up, that their like noticeability of pain reduction started going down because their tolerances went up. And the term breakthrough pain was invented. And breakthrough pain was like, hey, you have this medicine that you take for an all day, and if you have a bad pain day or like you have a spike in pain, like you do something and you hurt yourself, you can take this other medicine. But instead of you can take this other medicine, they were given strict instructions, adult doctors, to strengthen the dose rather than increase the dose frequency. So if you were at the 80 milligrams, for instance, most people were at the 20 to 40, but if you were at the 40 milligrams, they told you to prescribe 80 instead. So yeah, the problem was instead of increasing dose frequency, which was their system of like trying to prevent overdoses and everything like that, they were raising the dosage, and that's how they were trying to hide that it was lasting for less time. But like, what if you're at the 160 and you have breakthrough?
It's terrifying to know half the shit they got away with.
Yeah. And there's a lot of really fucked up emails that came out very recently, and that's what we're going to be covering next week. But yeah. So then came the other problem. They had the whole overdose thing figured out with radars. They had the whole thing figured out as far as they settled a lawsuit saying, yeah, we were telling people to dose stronger rather than more often, but that was just our way of keeping people from having spare medicines in their closet or spare medicines in their medicine cabinets. In 2013, however, their patent started to expire. And suddenly the tone changed. Suddenly they said, hey, so the drug that we've been like selling for like the last 15 years has a really high abuse potential. So I don't think we should have different manufacturers creating this. So they shouldn't be allowed to copy it. We're the only ones that know how to do this properly. We've got 15 years of experience here, so yeah, you shouldn't have generic manufacturers start producing OxyContin, and that's the reason why we don't see generic OxyContin. We just see oxycodone tablets. And the FDA followed along and said, yep, there should be no generic versions of OxyContin, the time release form of it, to be sold, and they got a couple more years out of their patent. So the prescriptions did fall 33% between 2012 to 2016. However, they started another company called Munda Pharma, which is a Sackler-owned company, and their mission statement is essentially to break into new markets. So they're essentially trying to get into Mexico, Brazil, and China with the same medicine and have a patent in those countries to sell into those countries. So not only are they done with the U.S., they're gonna go on to China. um,
Right. It's one of those things where you're like, haven't you guys done enough?
yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So there was a lot of really, really damning emails that came out. Um, sorry. Next week we'll be covering them for sure. But one of the biggest ones, and this is the reason why I was so interested in doing this one, was there was a company called Kinsley and Company, I want to say.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, McKinsey and Company. They're the most prestigious consulting law firm, I guess, in the medical sphere. They had 160 pages worth of emails come out and slides revealing information and advice that they had given to the Sackler family. And in 2017, one of the presentations was to lay out options to shore up sales, and one of the options was to give distributors a rebate for every OxyContin overdose attributable to pills that they sold. And the total was $14,810 per event. So they would pay CVS $36.8 million that year. I'm not sure if this was actually put into, this was just the projected term. So essentially, there was 484,000 or 2,484 customers who went to CVS that had an overdose or develop a opioid use disorder. They would give CVS, not the person, CVS, $14,810 per that amount of people, which is $36.8 million. That's how they would have fixed those. Yeah, they say CVS and Anthem were the biggest clients for McKinsey's. And yeah, so that's kind of the reason why I really wanted to jump into it. Because I learned that apparently human life is worth $14,810. That's how much.
To the pharmacy.
Yeah, to the pharmacy. Yeah. That's yeah. So like when I saw that, I was like, the fuck. I don't know. There's a lot of emails, so I wish somebody had just sat down and made like a little timeline of like event, email, event, email. But basically, what I'd just gone down is like the bullet points of the story of OxyContin. And yeah, even to this day, like there is no OxyContin. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that. There are OxyContin prescriptions, but they're not easy to get. But oxycodone is prescribed left and right. It's a lot harder for the prescriptions to be made. Doctors cannot write it on a piece of paper. I think they do write it on a piece of paper, but they also have to transmit it electronically. People who receive opioids have to go and fill out a contract saying, hey, this is the only doctor I'm going to go see for this. If it's for anything else and I get opioids at a different doctor, and they will know that there's no more contract and you're never going to get prescriptions from this person ever again, type of a thing. Drug tests, I mean, it's gotten a lot more strict, but at the same time, this is the bad part about this, is the people who do need it end up getting screwed just as much as the people who don't need it. Like last year, actually probably exactly a year ago, like I had my appendix taken out, and the doctor was like, hey, we'll give you 3 oxycodones while you're here. We'll send you home with 4 of them, and then after that, take some Tylenol. So like, I mean, it wasn't super painful. Like it hurt at first, but like, it wasn't as bad. But like, imagine if it was anything else. So
It's funny actually because the person that I had spoken to that had given me like the lead to make the jump into getting a vasectomy.
yeah,
He was telling me, he's like, yeah, they gave me a bottle of oxycodone and told me sit there with a bag of peas for a couple days or whatever. And I was like, all right, cool, whatever.
yeah,
So I go in and I get it done. I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna take a couple days off anyway. Don't want to worry about driving around and stuff like that because of the drugs. You're getting your junk stabbed with a needle and cut up
right,
or cut around it.
yeah,
Yeah, get it done, and they basically say, take ibuprofen and Tylenol, you'll be all right. And it's
yeah,
fucked up because I say this, and a lot of people don't realize it until you actually see it happen. But I'm a younger male, and I have tattoos.
yeah,
I can watch somebody go in and say, "Oh, I have a backache," and they'll throw fucking Vicodin at them, anything that they need. And, they can say, "Oh yeah, Tylenol just doesn't work," and it's like, "Oh, you poor thing. Here, let us help you."
yeah,
You know. But being a younger male and having tattoos, it is like the prejudice is amazing when you come across it. And it's like I
yeah,
have nothing on my record that says anything about drug abuse. Just being a male and tattooed is enough to say he probably does drugs or he'll probably abuse it.
yeah. That's the
But you
thing
have the
is,
prejudice to take into account as well, on top of when you actually need these drugs for what they were designed for. Shit out of luck. Just
right,
because of the prejudice that was built over the problem that they created.
yeah, and that's just it. Is like, oh, and also let me just shore this one up with as well. When they had started to lose the patent to OxyContin, they had realized the shit that they have created.
Hmm.
They also started selling buprenorphine, and they created their own called Bustrains or Boostrans. It's the pill form
Hmm.
of bu. So there's Suboxone and there's methadone. They they're both opioids. So the idea behind the opioid assisted treatment is that if you're a heroin user, you might get some fentanyl one time and die. But if you get this opioid from a doctor, you won't get fentanyl. And the way that they had set up the idea was it was buprenorphine, but it was also naloxone, which is essentially what they give you if you have an overdose. So if you took any other kind of opioid, you would get really, really sick and you wouldn't get high off of it, but the bupe was the only one that would be able to break through anyway.
Hmm.
But not only did they realize that they have created a problem, they're like, yeah, and we have just the product for you. Here's some shitty fucking medicine that doesn't even fix the problem. It just makes it so that that you're still a paying customer to us. Like it doesn't make addiction go away at all. It keeps you hooked to it. Um, and in some cases worse. But like just the fact of these people created a problem, perpetuated this whole stereotype of the tattoos and like people abusing these drugs that they
Hmm.
created. And then they're like, and we got the cure for you.
Right. And that's why, I mentioned it. I
Yeah.
actually went in and had, the most sensitive part of the male anatomy was worked on. And we're talking like cauterization and everything. And it's
Right.
like just the thought of that alone is painful enough, like enough, kind of like a dude watching another guy get hit in the balls. It's like you feel it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Now imagine having that kind of medical work done and then the one thing that you would think would actually make it suck less in order to move forward from that procedure, it's like the prejudice immediately says, nope,
Yeah.
sorry, it'll suck for you. Now, when we have like an older guy come in a fucking suit and tie or something like that wanting the same thing, we'll take care of him. But
And that
you make us concerned.
yeah, and that's another thing is it's like they've actually set up, I'm pretty sure that this is a thing. They do have like telltale signs, and some of those telltale signs are like things like tattoos or smoker. That's another one. Like
Hmm.
for me, it's the same thing. Like if you say you're a smoker, all of a sudden you're an addict. there is a connection between addiction and, another addictive substance. But like, yeah. But like, even if you have an addictive substance, if they like went through a serious medical procedure, telling somebody to just take Tylenol, their pain isn't their pain is just as valid as somebody who hasn't had an addiction. Like,
And just as you were saying, when they said that, they basically give you the idea that you have a right to be pain free. That doesn't go away just because you happen to have a substance abuse problem. I'm not
yeah,
going to hurt any less.
yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because at the same time, like, there is this medicine, and then they did create it. They say that, there's a lot of people in medical field that say cannabis is addictive while also handing out this shit. And you would
Yep.
think because there is a pharmaceutical that's not very often prescribed, but there is a pharmaceutical form of THC which is not great. Um, to You would think that there would be an addiction problem there. You'd think it'd be just as bad as this one, but no, it's about the same. Or actually, it's about less, sorry. But like, that's just it. The the fact of the matter is these companies, and I'm not trying to apologize for them, but when I'm saying this is this company is a corporation. One of the jobs of the CEO or any C-level employee is to make the board money and make their investors money. That's their only job. That type of fucked up situation with addictive medicine is the reason why this happened. But that doesn't excuse any of these people for how that they continued to push on. You would think that they would have the addiction. I mean, even though it really is shit, the opioid assisted medication, that they would have had this long before, or they would have had some sort of system that tapering off is one of the things that you have to do with this medicine. That they would have, that it would take more than a national situation of overdoses to create a tapering program, a monitoring program. Like, these were the things that they had known going into it. And how they knew about it was because the first strike, the first issue with this medicine was we have a problem with people, finding this drug as end of life. So people see this as a very serious medicine. We need to make it less serious sounding. So we're going to go with oxycodone, which everybody is mispronouncing as oxycodone. So people are seeing this as less of a problem. Therein lies the issue of you have to make the board the money. But at the same time, that they decided that without any kind of forethought about what the fuck they're going to be creating and what the fuck they're going to have to do to sustain it. So much so to the point that they had to say, our medicine is absolutely shit. And our promises that we have made that it's less abusive or less abuse potential, that they had to basically throw that one out the window and say, yeah, it's really, really bad. And that was the only way that they were able to fight their loss of patent. So, yeah, that's all I have to say about that. But they had set up theirs, like you were saying, smokers, tattoos, any kind of mention of marijuana. They usually, when you get checked into a hospital, not like sometimes it's asked in ERs, but they always ask you one of two questions: your mental health situation. So like if you're depressed or thoughts of suicide ever in your life, that's one of the things that they say. Okay, obviously we shouldn't give them opioids, but another one is street drugs. And when they say street drugs, they always mention marijuana. The reason why is because if you say yes to marijuana, they just check the street drugs box and not the marijuana box, so they think immediately no opioids. Yeah, it's really interesting, but at the same time, yeah, fuck these people is all I have to say about it. And yeah, there's a whole
I
bunch of
agree.
emails. Huh?
I agree. Fuck these people. Fuck them sideways
Yeah.
with a cactus.
Sackler emails. Oh, and then very recently, so they were pushed into settlement in multiple states. State attorneys had sued the Purdue Pharma. They had multiple situations where they had to pay out shitloads of money for treatment and all that stuff. But the CEO, I'm trying to figure out what the name of the family is. So in one of the settlements, they had agreed to a settlement, and then a day later had made the threat. I'm not sure if they did file it. Had made the threat that they needed to file bankruptcy, and I'm pretty sure they did file it. So they didn't have to pay that fine. They were going for bankruptcy, and in bankruptcy, it could still discharge that debt if it's higher than the assets of the company, which I highly doubt is true. That would take a lot of very, very interesting forms of accounting to do, but it's essentially they liquidate all the assets or different chapters. But in one of the chapters, they liquidate all the assets that aren't used to keep the company afloat, but like everything else goes away. And in those situations, that money is what is sent to the debitors, creditors. Anyway, the people who they owe money to, that's how they break it up. So like if they only got like $1 billion and there's like a couple hundred people, it would break it up into 100 million each. Yeah, 100 million each. So like they wouldn't get their total amount. So they're just trying to screw other states over of paying out. Um, and then there was a family member, the CEO, that ended up pleading guilty. Purdue Pharma pleads guilty to federal criminal charges related to national opioid crisis. What's the name of the person? Steve Miller pleaded guilty on behalf of the company during a virtual federal court hearing. One object of dual object conspiracy to defraud the United States and to violate the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, and 2 counts of conspiracy to violate the federal anti-kickback statute. The anti-kickback statute being the sending out doctors and giving them lavish vacations, paying $500 to people to speak at events, just kickbacks just in general for prescribing their medicine. But those were the seminars and the speaking events being 2 examples of the kickbacks. The Food and Drug Cosmetic Act being the 12 years or the 12 hours when really in reality it was 6 to 8 and they knew it. But yeah, they seem to be facing a $3.544 billion and an additional $2 billion in criminal forfeiture, according to the Department of Justice press release. That's how much they owe. No jail time, none of that shit. Criminal charges of very serious proportions. The whole violate the federal anti-kickback statute. That's a pretty that's a pretty big one. Yeah, that's a pretty big one. And dual object conspiracy to defraud the United States is a pretty serious one too. No prison time.
Now, if that were you or I, how well do you think that would have paid out?
I mean, honestly, if we were sitting on a couple $100 billion, probably wouldn't be facing any jail time.
I'm just saying you and I, like, as is.
Yeah, no, it would be 100% life in prison. Possible just execution. Essentially. Like, that's, yeah. um, they are also in civil litigation, obviously. But yeah, that is what the Sackler family has left as their name and virtue in human life, as literally worse than any fucking serial killer. Like, literally nobody has killed more people than what they created. And even I think it's every day is a 9/11 worth of people dying from overdoses. Now, it's not all
That's
on
horrendous.
OxyContin, but still.
That's just horrendous to me to even think about.
Yeah, it's bad. But yeah, we'll probably be covering a little bit more of their emails. I don't know. A lot of people seem to have really liked the deep dive thing that I've been trying to do, so I'm gonna keep doing it. If you guys want to hear about the recreational marijuana study in North Dakota, there's another video that's in the channel under feature content. That's me just covering paragraph for paragraph, like the major ones, just kind of commenting on what all was said in it. So feel free to check that out. If you like this video, I was about to say, if you like this, share. No, if you like this video, make sure to share it out.
If you like this shit,
Pretty much. If you like this shit, share it out. And check us out on the YouTube channel. Hit subscribe. I'm gonna do the thing that every single YouTuber fucking does every single video. 35% of you guys aren't subscribed. You should hit the subscribe button if you're one of the 35. Yes, we can actually see that. We can also
dude, I
see.
hate that that's a thing now. Is every time I watch a video, and most of you who watch aren't subscribed.
Yeah. Like, okay, let's just see. Um,
Like Fit MC, he does that too.
what?
Fit MC, it's a YouTuber that I watch that does
No.
Minecraft.
I mean, that's one of the things that every single YouTuber does is obsessively sit and watch their analytics.
Yep.
Let's see here. Uh, engagement? No. Audience. There it is. Audience. It's actually down to 23% of you guys are. Why don't I share it? Why the fuck not? I don't think it really matters.
Basically, Phil is saying y'all need to unfuck yourselves.
So
Okay?
yeah, 23% of you guys are not subscribed. But yeah, it's not that much information. If I scared you by showing all that, it's really not that much information. But yeah, we could also see like in comments and stuff like that if people are subscribed. So whatever. Where was I? Yeah, if you like these types of videos, newsy type things, check out Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. It's on the YouTube channel as well under Radio Free Fargo playlist that I should probably a Canna-Talk ND Radio Free Fargo playlist, and that's on the homepage as well. And yeah, make sure to check out Canna-Talk ND with Wilson on 95.9 Radio Free Fargo every Thursday from 4 to 5 p.m. If you're not in the Fargo-Moorhead area, you can also listen online, radiofreefargo.org, as it's happening. And about half an hour to an hour later, it will be on every single podcasting platform. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, if you really watch it that way. Good luck. And all the other ones. The links are in the description down below as well. So make sure to find the one that you like and go with that. And the next day, like Friday, it's up on the YouTube page. Usually between 5:30 and well, usually I hit it at 5:30, but sometimes if I don't get it rendered in time, it will usually be like 6 or 7. So that's the thing. My name is Phil.
I'm Anthony.
And this has been Canna-heads. This is where I do the weekly thing where I do the setup thing when I should have already had it figured out. There we go. So yeah, we'll see you guys here next week, 7:30 p.m. And yeah, Sunday, 7:30 p.m. All right. Bye.
Bye, people.